Maybe a little bit from talking to journalists and stuff, you know. Maybe a little bit. They don't harp on about New Order and the Smiths quite so much as they used to. I tend to think sometimes that people overanalyse their records and don't just sort of listen to them. You know, just give them a quick play and go, yeah, I like that tune. No, I don't like that tune. They go, well, how does this relate in the context of the band's history? And, you know,
I'm still trying to work out a way to answer that question because it's being asked us all the time at the moment. And
I think
I suppose the answer is...
On the other hand, we're both really proud of the two bands. New Order and the Smiths. We're both really proud of what we've done with them. Don't get me wrong, we're not got a downer on that. It's just that both those bands left such an indelible mark.
Obviously, neither of us are going to complain about it because both, as Bernard said, you know, we're very proud of what we've done, and it's just one of those things where, you know, if the standard is pretty high, and in both our cases, we've been involved in groups that were really well liked. You know, Bernard with Joy Division and No Order, and me with the Smiths. It gives you kind of you have to really shoot at something pretty high, but kind of, you know, being Mr. Philosophical about it. If that's what our destiny is, and we have to shoot pretty high, then we have to shoot pretty high. Great. It does add a little bit of a certain kind of... It does add a lot of pressure, actually, to be honest. And I think on the second record, but both Bernard and myself were maybe subconsciously aware of the attention that we were going to get, and then we then in turn put our too much attention maybe on the record and just basically took too long doing it. But once we got over that hurdle, it's kind of gives a little bit of a freedom on this record, because we've been through that process of like putting a magnifying glass on what we do, and of course there's an element of it in what, you know, for everybody that, you know, you want it to be, you know, as good as it can be. But we just thought, well, we've done it, we can't do that to ourselves again. You know, spend like two years making a record, and I think this record is all the better for that realisation.
Yeah, we did this. It took 3 months to record and mix this, which is pretty fast for us, really. I think the previous one took 2 years. And we were very aware of that, you know. We just wanted to stop ironing out all the creases in the record. Because also, on the previous album, there was a lot of technology involved, and the computer was involved a lot, and with computers being so powerful, you can do loads and loads of stuff with them that really shouldn't be doing. Right, you can iron out all the lumps, get rid of every last mistake, and I think people find perfection boring. Really, they like to hear a few mistakes. It's like you know, if you take a piece of furniture from IKEA, and then you get a beautiful old antique, people go for the antique every day because there's loads, it's been banged about and knocked, and you can see the hand that made it, you know. I think we've kind of realised that's an important part of music, that people want to hear the mind behind the work, you know, and not just hear something that's perfect and polished.
In the past, I mean, really, for like 7 years, both Bernard and myself have had no distinction between writing and recording. Like a lot of musicians who are kind of non-rock group kind of based, thinking like dance musicians and other kind of duos, we use the studio almost like an instrument, which was an idea which was pioneered pretty much, you know, in pop music by Brian Eno, really. And we did have some common ground there, and we were into that. We were into using the studio like an instrument. So we would come in every day and methodically chip away and write and try lots of different ideas and experiment. And with this record, we took a different approach in that Bernard and I would still get together, but we'd get together just a few times each week. And because we spent a couple of days or a few days away from each other, the ideas were percolating. So we'd get together and each of us would have a couple of pretty strong ideas. So we'd have a couple of strong ideas and we'd work on them, and we worked on them pretty quick with 2 guitars.
We kind of worked on 3 songs at a time as well, didn't we? Rather than in the past, we'd write all the music for the album, and then I'd hit the lyric, you know, hit the vocals. And on the last one, I think I had 12 vocals to do in like 2 weeks, lyrics and melodies, and it all got a bit too much. So on this one we decided to sort of bite off smaller chunks and let's do 3 songs at a time, finish them, work on another 3, which helped.
Plus we knew we had musicians on this record, which was a first for electronic, because the idea with electronic, I'm not sure whether people realise, is that we were formed as very much as an anti-group. Both of us had been in groups and we knew of the great things about being in a group, but we knew from first-hand knowledge of some of the downsides of being in bands. So in a certain way it was almost like a refuge for the two of us to be able to still make music and be intense about music and try and be a little bit kind of pioneering in our own way, but with just 2 of us. And that was the foundation of what we were about. Now, just with the passing of time, you know, you want to change and things change and circumstances change. And we put together some musicians to play some just televisions and things on the second record, and we kept those musicians for the third album. Now Bernard, electronic will always be, as everyone knows, just myself and Bernard, but we did feel like we had a little bit more of a kind of family atmosphere going on. So we would write the songs, and then when we got the songs to a certain level, we would then, instead of going into detail, we would just write a bunch more songs, which kept it fresh for me and Bernard. We stayed in sort of ideas mode rather in production mode, and then we take those songs to get the band together, and then it goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, switch on the recording machine, and we actually went from one extreme to another, because even regular bands don't really, you know, these days don't very often end up with the first or second or third take, as it were, on the record, and almost every song on this record is the first, second or third take.
Well, I worked with Arthur on Confusion by New Order in 1963, Thieves Like Us, and
Salvation.
we realised when we sort of got a bit into this album that it was going to be pretty rocky and guitar based, and we just wanted a producer that had a certain amount of aggression, and I knew that Arthur was quite an aggressive sort of person, really, and also he's not a musician, and we wanted a kind of anti-musician element, really. Arthur's like a music fan, you know, like he's always going to gigs and always buying records and stuff, and we wanted that kind of musician element in there to sort of give us a board to bounce off, really. And I've always liked Arthur's beats as well. I like the beats that he's done. They're quite brutal, and we thought it'd be a good choice, really. Well, can we just say that as well, like the production, it was really co-production between the band, Arthur, our engineer Jim Spencer, who probably worked harder than any of us put together, really, you know. And a guy called Merv DePayer that used to be a keyboard player in Cameo, and he should be doing the interview, really, shouldn't he? Because his smile's more interesting than us two.
Pretty unusual.
He's very unusual.
A bit of a jazz cat, but he rocks. He's a good musician. With us, we're associated with people like obviously Neil Tennant and Chris Lowe. Cal Bartos was on the second album, and on this album we used less famous musicians, but nonetheless people who are important to us, you know. And we've got Jed Lynch again, who played on our second album, who was the drummer in, mostly known for his work with Black Grape, and he played drums on all the album. And we've got a friend of ours called Jimmy Goodwin from Manchester, who's a great writer and a really good singer, who sang backing vocals and played the bass guitar on a lot of the songs. So that was the nucleus. Bernard, myself.
He's in a new band in Manchester called Doves.
Yeah, Jimmy's in this band called Dove. So there's Bernard, myself on guitars and vocals, Jed Lynch on drums, and Jimmy Goodwin on bass. And then we bumped into this girl called Astrid Williamson, who used to be in Goya Dress, who's now a solo artist on Nude, Astrid. And she sang backing vocals on a lot of the tracks, which was fortuitous for us, really, that we met her, because we both of us like girl singers, and we've looked for that kind of very obviously white voice in the past and never really kind of found it. We found that, you know, quite often when we tried it in the past, it was sometimes too wistful or folky or whatever. And in Astrid, I think we've got someone who really works well with Bernard's voice.